Good morning, everyone. Give folks a couple of moments to join the conversation here. Another gray and or sunny Tuesday, depending on where you're sitting. It's probably gray, mine is gray. Still enjoyable.
The way Washington should be. Cold and gray, can't tell where the horizon is. The Washington way.
Western Washington, at least.
That's true. Eastern Washington is wind and dust.
And yeah, 300 days of sunshine. Some of those days are a little cold, but still sunny.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right. Well, I'm sure a few more folks will trickle in as the conversation gets started, but welcome everyone to another Tuesday Coffee Chat with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. I have my coffee here, got a little Batman cup. Hopefully you all have some beverage of your choice as well. Like I said, my name is Misha Lujan, Government Relations Manager for Economic Alliance. And we have a wonderful conversation today. We're going to take a look at housing, trends, needs, and innovation. So I'll introduce our lovely panelists. First, we have Chris Collier, the Program Manager at Alliance for Housing Affordability, Joe Minicozy, AICP, you might have to correct me there, I'm not sure, Principal of Urban 3, Mike Pattison, Government Affairs Manager with Master Builders Association, and Julie Willey, Community Development Director for the City of Everett. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to kick things off with Chris. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind sharing screen and taking it from there.
You bet. Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to speak today, Misha and EASC. My name is Chris Collier, Program Manager for the Alliance for Housing Affordability, as I pull up my screen here. The Alliance is really just an interlocal confab between all the municipalities of Snohomish County. So I support all the cities in understanding housing affordability. And what I'm going to do is try to set the stage for, can y'all see that okay? Come through? Okay. Is setting the stage for the great presenters following up. So I'm just presenting housing by the numbers. Why do we need to be having this conversation? And why do you need to listen to what Joe, Mike, and Julie have to say in terms of innovation and what else we can be doing? Because the reality is we are 50,000 units behind. Today, the Puget Sound region, the PSRC region, that's King, Pierce, Kitsap, and Snohomish counties, are 50,000 units behind. Don't take PSRC's word for it, take Northwest Multiple Listing Service, that today reports we have 0.41 months of home sales inventory for all of Snohomish County. It should be 6 months instead of less than a half. So today we're behind and we're going to suffer for it. You see that in the 117% price increase in this median sale price of a single family detached home in Snohomish County, including city areas from 2000 to 2021, after you adjust for inflation. Median household income, again adjusted for inflation, has risen by 9% from 2000 to 2019 in Snohomish County. This is a direct response to what we're seeing in the foregoing of we're 50,000 units behind. The market price is responding immediately. The median required income, given typical loan terms for these home products, single-family detached homes, is $151,000 a year. How many occupations pay that, even at the median? That's very, very few. How many incomes or occupations combining their incomes make that? Still a very small number. 1.5 million employees in the region work in an occupation with a median wage of less than $100,000. Let that sink in. That's, half of them are below 100,000. That's a lot of people region-wide. Rent has risen by 70%. Looking at actual contracted rents and then advertised rents in the near term, you see that rent has risen by 70% from 2000 to 2019 and has jumped by another 20 some odd percent in the last year and a half. Ending with this statistic, which is looking at the square footage of advertised rents today. So looking at the advertised square footage and the advertised rent, you're paying $2.60 a square foot for an apartment. If you bought a single family detached home in Snohomish County In 2021, you're paying $1.60 a square foot. That's with the same loan terms that I used to get to 151 as the required income. Renters are getting trashed and they're stuck. Rent is running away from their income, homeownership is running away from their income, and they're left renting something that is uneconomical, simply uneconomical. And to compound this, the region's middle density housing permit activity countywide or region-wide, that's King, Snohomish, Pierce, and Kitsap, declined by 3.9% from 2007 to 2019, according to the Puget Sound Regional Council's tracking of municipal permit issuance. So our middle density housing, these images that are appearing on the right, there's less and less and less of them actually getting permitted across the entire region. These are your starter homes that you might graduate to from being a renter. And the reason this is important is that PSRC predicts we're looking at an 800,000 unit deficit by 2040. And these pictures that have been appearing on the right as I've been talking, this is middle density housing. This is what we're talking about. And this is what I hope that you think about and you have in mind as Joe, Mike, and Julie are talking. This is the way out, and this doesn't look bad. The middle picture in particular fits right in downtown Snohomish, I would say. It fits in most cities in Snohomish County. The one on the top is actually cottage housing in Kirkland or Kenmore in East King County. These middle density housing is a very nice thing, but we don't really do it. So, this is my housing by the numbers, and this is why I hope that everyone's paying attention and really thinking creatively with an open mind about let's talk solutions. So with that, I'll hand it over to Joe to go into a little more detail, and I'll stop sharing for you, Joe. Take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Let me share screen. So we've done an analysis. My name is Joe Minicozy. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, and our company focuses on visualizing economics. And Chris brought us into Snohomish County to do a countywide analysis to visualize the economics and the economic productivity of the community. So there's a whole hour-long PowerPoint that goes with that y'all can look into. But the basic thesis of our company and the way that we practice is that if I can show you your brain and show you your creative thought processes in green versus your brainstem activity in blue, if I can do a snapshot in your brain, can I do an economic MRI of your place? And a lot of this comes down to making an apples to apples understanding of the community. So we typically look at maps like this of valuation, and this is Snohomish County, just total value. So non-taxables in gray, and y'all know that east of your county is mostly non-taxable. You see these huge purple splotch. So green is low value, purple is high value. So the Boeing facility is super, super potent. It's a very valuable building. But when you look at it per acre, the map changes. And think of it this way. Think of this first map is miles per gallon or miles per tank. And the second map is miles per gallon. So this is your economic productivity. All real estate is different sizes. And if this is one way of looking at it, but I can just show it to you in 3D. So when you zoom into the core area of development on the west side of the county, you can see how it's sort of on fire with real estate development, but it's not all the same. You can spot downtown, downtown Everett here, and you can see the core densities is a hotter color. Conversely, suburban sprawl, you can see a lot of it up here in Marysville, is super low potent. So let's kind of tune out the noise here for a second. The unincorporated areas, you get all of this kind of fuzz between them because you're not really making place. It's just kind of suburban single family development. And so to break this down one step further and look at single family housing, the average Walmart is pulling about 1.4 million per acre. County single family countywide is about 500,000. If you look at just the areas that we focused in let's kind of step back, these core areas, these communities, it goes from about 550,000 an acre to about 1.8 million. So that's way more potent because you're in those places of higher density. So I'll just break down a couple of them. This is looking inside Snohomish, taking 16 houses in Snohomish County. It's pulling about 2.4 million an acre. If you grab 16 houses in Lake Stevens, you're looking at 1.5 million. So you're seeing the valuation go down. So single family houses, but the denser you are on the left, you see the potency. And if you really want to stretch out, you look at over here in Woodway, again, 16 houses, you've consumed 35 acres for those 16 houses, you've dropped your value. So there's a perverse incentive to waste your real estate. It's just the more you stretch out, the lower your tax productivity. It's that simple. Looking through some typologies, going from single family, now we're looking at some townhouses. I'm trained as an architect. It's kind of hard to call these townhouses. That's all I see as garages, but putting that aside, it's denser. You're seeing 3.5 million, 3.3 million, 3.3 million. Now remember, single family was at 1 million. Here's some more, you can tell that a higher density downtown houses. Now we're up to 5.6 million. This one here is at 9 million an acre. So still a single family product, just a different design. And now we're kicking out at around 5.7 million. So we're going from 1 million to 5 times that. This is the potency that you get. There's actually reward for that higher density if you can make it happen. Inside the study areas, it's over that. It's about 5, let's call it closer to 6. And then there are these other, again, housing products, is condominiums. You have different ways of doing condominiums in Washington than a lot of states, but these are different condominium products. You're looking at 4 million. You're getting these guys here at 14 million. So the average for the condos spans between 5.6 million and let's call it 4 million, depending on the typology. So inside the study areas, you're looking again 5 to 4 million. And again, you can have higher density condos getting more potency. Now we're at 8 million, 9 million, and this one is super fascinating here in Edmonds, $18 million an acre. Again, still single family product, but think of the potency for paying off that infrastructure. So we've become familiar with this graphic of missing middle from Dan Paralek at Opticos. And so we put some of the sticker prices on what missing middle gets you. So you could see single family housing in your area, what it produces versus higher density duplexes versus triplexes versus townhouses versus multiplexes versus in the core of your city. Inside the study areas, it looks like this. So we would advocate that make that stuff that's giving you more wealth easier to do. How do you make more of that happen and increase that supply? This should be the thing that every community turns toward. And one last point before I leave, sales taxes in Washington, this matters. You need to get better data than this. This is how your state gives you the data. We pull the data from Replica, which is a software company where you could buy the data and just put them side by side. Look at Everett compared to the way that you see Everett. So in different states, we could see data better and more refined. And in Washington, y'all need to change this policy. And I'll give you one state example. This is Minnesota. This is Minneapolis. Here's Mall of America. We could just do the retail taxes of Mall of America. And then when you bring downtown into it, here's downtown up here, and here's Mall of America. Y'all should be able to see this. And so if you can't see the data, you need to get that data in some way that you can look at it. You shouldn't be running your government blind. And I'll just go ahead and stop there and turn it over to Mike.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good to see some friends. I haven't seen it in a while, especially Sonia Kraske out there. It's been way too long. I'm Mike Pattison with the Master Builders Association. I'm our Snohomish County manager. We've been around since 1909. We have about 2,600 member companies, builders, developers, remodelers, suppliers, and everything in between. Chris, I thought, teed it up real well for what I'm going to speak about, which is some of the headwinds out there, and then I'll pivot to a little more positive at the end. There are some solutions on the horizon that give me hope. We definitely have a very large population to accommodate in the next planning cycle. We can be very confident in that number. The Washington State Office of Financial Management has given us population numbers for the last couple of cycles, and they've been extremely accurate. So when they say we'll be growing by 800,000 to 1 million people over the next 20 years, you can rely on that. And that's helpful. It's a big number, but I think it's helpful to have some certainty attached to that. As he also pointed out, we have less than 2 week supply. That's shockingly low. 6 months, as Chris pointed out, is a healthy balance, and we are very, very far out of balance. Some of the other headwinds, we face supply chain issues as builders. It's hard to get many of the products that we need. You may have heard stories of builders going to Home Depot and Lowe's to get appliances for new homes. And that's absolutely true. It's difficult at every level. No surprise, there's a labor shortage out there. It's tough to get workers, just as tough to retain workers. And there's a lot of poaching that goes on inside our industry. Walk across the street and grab the other guy's employees. That happens. That leads to price escalation. There's a land shortage. Maybe that's the core of all of our issues as home builders. We haven't expanded urban growth areas since really in any meaningful way since the Growth Management Act came into being, and land supply gets tighter and tighter. And just as important, the easy land has been built. As some of my members say, we're building on land that we used to drive right on by. So what's left is more expensive to develop. Land with slopes, land with wetland issues, and all those issues that you deal with on a site add to cost. Cost of regulation and fees, impact fees don't go down, they continue to increase. Not complaining about them, but that's a reality. That's a cost that gets passed on. And there are a lot of good things that we've done with energy code and so on, but it's expensive. The most recent energy code could add up to $30,000 to the cost of a home. Not to mention the fact that some of the things that we need to comply are hard to get. So more and more headwinds out there. Permit timelines. And this is another area we're not complaining. Local government has the same challenges that we have in getting and retaining employees. It's very challenging. We're fortunate we have planning departments throughout Snohomish County that work with us, that meet with us, and we identify choke points and work through those, but time is money, and permit timelines, another issue. We're roughly 14 weeks for a first review, which is too high. And our planning departments recognize that. They're not happy with it. So we're working together to try and get through that. Materials costs, we all know about lumber and some of these materials. Luckily, we've had a little relief on lumber lately, but it has a long way to go. And in the most recent headwind, which has me very concerned, interest rates. Be mindful that affects both ends of housing. Our builders borrow money to build, and the buyer borrows money to purchase. So we get a bit of a double whammy. And for the last several years, low interest rates in the face of all these challenges has been the glue that's held things together. And I'm concerned about that glue drying and chafing a little bit. So we're keeping a very close eye on the effect of increasing interest rates, which we certainly have not seen the end of. That's going to continue to grow as a concern. And of course, geopolitical concerns can affect all of these things. And prayerful that there's some resolution to some of those things. The good news is there are tools in the toolbox, as I like to say, to solve these problems. First of all, we have many local leaders in Snohomish County that get it, that want to work with us, with home builders and developers. And there's hardly a day that goes by that we're not meeting with somebody on how to address these issues. I meet almost daily with Snohomish County. Was out in Monroe yesterday. Our local leaders want to be a part of the solution. So that's great news. Jobs are strong. That's helpful. And the downside of that is wages aren't keeping up. Wages always seem to lag price pressures. So while jobs are strong, wages need to come into alignment. Maybe the best opportunity out there is we have 2024 comprehensive plan updates that everybody's working on now. And this is our great opportunity to unleash some of the tools in the toolbox that we have. We have far too few ADU codes out there and opportunities, duplexes, triplexes, sixplexes, townhomes, cottage housing, all those things. We're lucky to see some slides on those. Easy to adopt. And many jurisdictions have. I'd like to point to Snohomish County as a leader on that. And some of these products are starting to catch fire. It was about 6 years ago that Snohomish County adopted a duplex code. And frankly, it just sat. I don't think anybody applied under Snohomish County's duplex regulations for a couple of years. Then that first applicant came in, put their toe in the water, and it went very well. And I think we're starting to see those take off. So these tools are starting to be used, but every jurisdiction needs to look at those now and in conjunction with their comprehensive plan updates. One last thing I'll mention, we have woefully inadequate zoning out there in many places. We have cities that have 1 unit per acre zoning, and that's just not acceptable in an urbanizing environment, in a high growth environment. That needs to change. And frankly, even 4 dwelling units per acre, which is of course much more common, probably is hard to justify. I think maybe 6 is doable by everybody. So a lot of headwinds, but we have opportunities right here on the horizon. I know every city in Snohomish County have started their comprehensive plan update. So the time is now to get working on these solutions. And with that, I think do I kick it back to our moderator?
Just for a moment. So I do see a couple of questions in the chat, and never fear, we will address them. I just want to make sure that all of our panelists get a chance to speak first. So if I could have Julie with the City of Everett go next, and then we will make sure to address your questions out loud for everyone.
Well, good morning. I'm Julie Willey. I'm the Community Development Director with the City of Everett, and I work alongside our Economic Development Director and their team, as well as our Planning Director team. So we are one department that are tackling housing issues from a lot of different levels. And when we had our planning meeting last week, I was a little fired up about this topic because I also have to focus on ensuring that we have shelter for all. So not only those that are housed and those that have affordability challenges, but those that are currently living unsheltered. And I'm really happy to be a part of this rich conversation and helping us to understand the crisis, quite frankly, that we're experiencing as a region. And depending on who I'm talking to, I get a little bit fired up about the severity, because it is my city and my county and my state, and we're not doing well in this area. And I also get a little fired up because sometimes it's controversial, or it's contrary viewpoints that keep us from really addressing the needs and making housing for all become a viable option. And that obviously for me includes those that are living unsheltered. It also includes those that are surviving on low-income wages, those that are seeking first-time homeowners, those that are perpetual renters, those that are seniors that are looking to downsize, and absolutely everything in between. And today, you know, we've got smart advocates on our call that are deeply educated and have strong knowledge about our history and what brought us here. And they have vast experience of success of what we might be able to do in the future to create new solutions to improve housing stock and affordability in the Pacific Northwest. And as it was mentioned, we have huge expectations for growth, but we're already behind. And so as a city, obviously, we are prioritizing housing, and we did recently adopt a new housing action plan. And housing will be a top focus as we're developing our next comprehensive plan. And we invite you to come and be a part of that. Certainly our Everett residents and businesses, we need you to be a part of that, because we need to hear from you and ensure that we're all planning for those that are sheltered and those that are unsheltered in our community as we are moving forward, so that we can actually create innovative solutions to alleviate this problem. And quite frankly, it's time for us all to hear and remember that if we want people to be housed, then we have to have housing. And if we don't want people living on our street, then we have to have a place to shelter them. We simply need affordable housing for all. Our city has been working to bring new types of housing for the past several years, and we've had some great success with our partners in Cocoon House and Housing Hope, Claire's Place Catholic Community Service Permanent Supportive Housing Unit, our safe parking lots, our innovative pallet shelter community for chronically homeless. We have our housing authority that's doing great to focus on affordable housing development and certainly preservation of affordable units. We have a lot of mixed income multifamily complexes that are growing in our community, but our needs have increased and the severity of challenges have shifted. So we're not only addressing homelessness that has solutions and are seeing positive results, but we're also having to learn to address those that are living unsheltered, who are not interested in services or shelter. And in that, we are seeing an increase of violence and destruction centered around unsanctioned encampments, either big or small, where there's a general sense of lawlessness that concentrates illegal behavior and use of narcotics. And it just adds to the urgency of the needs in our region to create more options. So not only options for housing, but better innovations for addiction and mental health treatment, so that many of our people living on our streets are dealing with. So we are working to increase shelter and housing and to better address the needs for supportive services for Everett residents. And we recognize that Everett cannot do this alone. So we are in deep interest of partnerships with our state, our county, our other cities, our businesses, and our service providers and our residents. And I really look forward to us figuring out together in these coming months and years. And I thank you for your time today, and I'll pass that back over to Misha.
Thank you so much, Julie. And before we dive into questions here, could you please share how people can learn more about your plan and how they can interact with it?
Absolutely. I will put my email in the chat, and I would be very happy to interact one-on-one to start. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, so we have some rather rich engagement in the chat here. So I'm going to try and get these questions out to folks. Let's see here. Okay, so Councilmember Dunn has a question around human well-being and valuation and how we calculate climate change and the effects on the broader community. And I believe for Joe.
Well, I mean, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I could answer it. It'd take about an hour, but you know, this is a simple question of economics. Chris laid out the case bare with the data that's staring y'all in the face. You can't produce enough housing to keep up with the existing cost. And so what's going on right now is y'all are pricing yourselves out of your own market because of other constraints on those economic systems. It's failed zoning policies where you require somebody to do that info that Chris talked about, yet they have to go through some mind-numbing process of 6 months review where everybody's going to study the building. And trust me, I'm a designer. There's good design and there's bad design. That should be talked about. But why could I go to the edge of your community and just waste land with a big surface parking lot with a strip mall on it? And it's going to be easier for me to do that. And I get a tax break. I get to do that at a cheaper tax contribution per square foot than that townhouse. So from a system of running government, y'all are going to start building a savings account to pay down affordable housing. So you're going to reach into your pocket of taxes to hand that money to a housing developer to pay for housing that you have leaks going on in your other system. And okay, so you want to address climate change? Let's talk about climate change. We should tear up some roads. We should start making it harder for people to drive. I mean, let's get real about this. But you have a burning issue in your housing costs right now where your folks can't afford to live in your community. So Julie is dealing with the end of this. Think of the bodies falling in a river. She's at the mouth of the river by the ocean, pulling the bodies out, trying to deal with chronically homeless and people that can't afford to live in your community. You know, it's all tied together. But if we don't look upstream to see those policies, I'm sorry, it's like we can't deal with climate change if we can't deal with the basics of housing. You know, I'm not going to talk about putting on a tie if we can't even put our socks on properly. So we have to be real about this. This is not just you all. This is happening across the country with investment dollars that are going into housing. And we need to be real about what the economic consequences of this. So I know that's kind of a non-answer, but I want to stay focused on the economics of housing.
Thank you. And just a quick addition to that question, another question on how valuation is related to the generation of tax income. Is that how things are operating?
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. Like, I showed you the value of the Walmart's 500,000 an acre, and the value of your housing, just single family housing, is twice that. And it comes down to the simple fact of Walmarts are cheap, dumb buildings. They're $50 a square foot to build them. So there's a perverse incentive that the cheaper and junkier the building you make, the lower the taxes. The average Walmart consumes more in police services than it pays in property taxes. So when you get one built in your community, y'all are writing a check to police that building. Did you vote on that? Did you all have a public conversation that we're going to pay for the police services of a Walmart? No, no one does. So if we're not asking these questions, if we get distracted with these other arguments like, hey, Joe, there's a solar panel on the Walmart. I don't care. You're paying for it. So just be aware of that. Is that the best use of public funds? Or is the better use of public funds to house people in your community so they can actually work in your community, to house that worker in that Walmart and charge Walmart appropriately for their costs in society? Or if you want to continue to subsidize them, awesome. Just make sure you know what those numbers are of the subsidy.
All right. And
I've had a lot of coffee this morning, so I'm on the East Coast. I'm ahead of y'all.
I love it. It's always a great opportunity when we're able to really engage with each other on these difficult topics. So I love the fire, love the spice, keep bringing it. A question for Julie. How is the city dealing with the zoning to help solve housing issues?
Well, the city of Everett went through a rethink zoning process in the last couple years, and we really have dove into some of our outdated zoning. And in addition to that, the ones that we have messed up on or we haven't fixed yet, we are folding into the conversations of our comprehensive plan, including single family residences. That's one that we didn't tackle at that time. COVID happened, and you can only imagine that cities had to pause on some of their work to address that pandemic, that I always like to remind us all that is still something that we're dealing with, and it really did happen. So like that was an effect. So nonetheless, this future comprehensive plan will help us to further kind of clean up any zoning concerns. So it's a really good time for us to have these conversations, get this expertise, get this added perspective, to make sure that we haven't missed big holes. They also have the housing action plan. So again, those, I think Chris put those in the chat, and I can certainly find the links if anybody needs those on our website.
Thank you. Another question, is the Urban 3 study published? The Snohomish County Recovery Team could greatly use it.
Yes, it is. I put a link to the YouTube video in the chat, which is hosted on the Alliance YouTube channel. It's the only video there, so it's easy to find.
Perfect.
You're the star of the show, Joe.
Oh, I see it. Sorry. Yep. I'm catching up in questions. Okay.
Yep. If anyone would like it and they don't see it going by in chat, just email me or email Misha, and I'll be happy to get it to you.
All right. And a question from Terry. Sorry if I'm a little bit behind in questions, guys. You guys are wonderful and engaging here. Are there any specific plans in the works for more independent senior apartment communities that take into consideration the fact that these fixed incomes do not increase to meet inflation and increased cost of living? Maybe a question for Julie.
Yeah, it's Julie and Chris, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie.
Well, I mean, I think it's recognized that it's a tragedy that's happening where rental increases are happening and people's incomes are not meeting the increase in their rent. And the senior population who is on a fixed income certainly has perhaps more dire concerns because they don't have the ability to increase their independent wealth. And my understanding is we don't have legal abilities in this state to cap rents or to stop landlords. So that part I would pass over to Chris to talk about the laws and the rules around that.
Yeah, so I work in the Housing Authority of Snohomish County. That's my nominal employer to support the cities in all of the work that I do. And from my perspective within the Housing Authority of Snohomish County, there are no senior only projects that are in the pipeline right now. And there's just not a lot happening right now. not for lack of effort, not for lack of trying. You have Housing Hope in Edmonds and Linwood. You have Pasco redeveloping Whispering Pines. You have this, you have that. I'm sure a dozen other things, but compared to the scale of need, we do not have the comparable action. And again, it's not for lack of trying. It's not like your housing authority is sitting on a big pile of treasure, just not using it. It's very expensive and it's very challenging. That would be a separate conversation that I would suggest to Misha is, talk about low income housing. How does that get built? Bring in, your Dwayne Leonards, Ashley Lovers Johnson, and so on, to talk about, and Fred Sastrom to talk about how hard it is to get those things done. I can tell you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the conversation about preservation of housing affordability. So that is another topic that I think that every community should have, because we right now might have affordable communities, but if they are, bought by private industries or people come in and swoop them up and remove that ongoing preservation of affordability, then we will have even more people not housed and more people that don't have access to affordable housing. So again, our housing authority are great partners in trying to move that conversation forward and having conversations about our senior community. I know that is a priority of Everett Housing Authority. It is a priority for Housing Hope. So we do have some of our nonprofit developers that are thinking about that, but they're also thinking about families with children, and they're also thinking about, our youth and our veterans. And so we've got such a need in all these various populations. Certainly our BIPOC community, those that are historically in poverty. I mean, we've got just a big list of people that need additional resources and ongoing resources.
So one thing I'll add to Julie's comment is, so looking at the number of very low income households, that's households with the average size of 3, making less than $55,300 a year. That's very low income according to HUD in 2019. That's the last year we have good data for. I tallied up the number of housing choice vouchers, other voucher programs that we have available, and income restricted units. And we have 77,000 some odd very low income households in Snohomish County in 2019. And today we have, we cover about 26% of those with either a housing choice voucher or a income restricted unit of some description. So we're leaving 55,000 plus or minus very low income households without assistance to figure it out somehow. And that's the challenge that's facing your housing authorities, is how do we prioritize that? And one thing I'll add is, looking at HASCO's voucher rolls, 75% of HASCO's voucher clients are senior, disabled, or both. And it wasn't always like that. But steadily, as people get pulled from the wait list, if they are not able to increase their income, as a senior household likely is not able to because they're on a fixed income, they're never leaving the voucher program. They're never going to increase their income, or the market's never going to cool off enough for them to get back into the private rental market. They're never leaving the program. It's now 75% is not going to exit the program of their own accord. Let's put it that way. That is a huge problem. So it's a huge mismatch of resources.
I think, another challenge is that there may be innovations, there may be new types of development, there may be things that we can do, but we also have the other push where we have political challenges, we have NIMBYism challenges, we have, some people are losing compassion, right? Because we as residents and as business owners are being affected by other people's challenges. And so it's a very complicated challenge that, I hope that we can find some kind of aligned vision as a community, as a county, as a region, to say, we don't want to do this. We want to be able to shelter people and house them first and give them that dignity and basic need. And we will have a better community because of it. But it's going to take us a long time to get to that one, North Star, I think.
Switching gears here really quick. Thank you both for that exchange. I'm going to send it over to Mike first, but I would love if any of you, all of you, would be able to answer. So 1 or 2 strategies for increasing the supply of housing in Snohomish County. And we're not looking for low-hanging fruit or what's politically feasible. We want the best strategies. Start with Mike.
Yeah, up zones, number 1, more density, simple, maybe not politically simple, but up zones. As I pointed out, we have far too inadequate of zoning out there. That is maybe that's answer 1 through 9. We absolutely have to upzone, and keeping costs under control. I think our partners in government need to understand that there's a death by 1,000 cuts that happens in housing, and before you know it, costs are out of control, and it's just not feasible. So zoning, cost containment.
Can I pick up on the cost? I mentioned the cost of Walmart and police services. One of the things that we recommend to our communities is think of it's all an exchange of what the corporation of a city is. So you're providing services to real estate, you should be getting a commensurate payment back for what you're paying in services. So what's the cost of your road, the pipe, the police department at a Walmart, et cetera? And you should run those numbers and think of the tax bill or the fees that you charge for a property as your 2-drink minimum. So you want to go ahead and use the property any way you want. You have to at least cover your cost. And if you're not covering your cost, then that's a subsidy. So as a community, you decide where to best use your subsidy. Is it best to use your subsidy for the police department at the Walmart, or is it best to use the subsidy to handle houselessness issues or affordability? And make that conscious choice, but don't leak your money all over the place and subsidize the system. You know, you're subsidizing a lot of money, a lot of real estate. I mean, we just poke around in your community. I was like looking at Kenmore, and there's like huge surface parking lots and used boat dealerships in the middle of downtown. How can they afford to carry that property? Because they're paying low taxes. So there's an economic incentive for them to waste that real estate. Meanwhile, that housing need gets pushed to the edge, and you waste more resources in the process. This is really simple economics. The other question that's been raised in the chat is somebody's asked about Blackstone or outside investors. Yes, you should have that number. You should know every single outside investor in your marketplace and who's gobbling up that resource. That's a really simple query. You just analyze all of your data set and just match the property address to the location. If it's not a homeowner, then it's probably an investor. Look at where the tax bill goes. There's also this other thing called Airbnb or VRBO. That's not Blackstone. That's somebody in California that's buying up housing, and they come up and visit it maybe once a year in Washington, but that's their retirement house. They're just cash flowing it as an income property and taking that out of the marketplace for y'all to use for permanent housing. So we need to be looking at this and asking questions and just not doing this dance the way that we've done it for the last 20 years. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Chris or Julie, do you have anything else to add to that?
I would support the big thing that I would support is cities acting in a collaborative fashion. Something that I have heard repeatedly, and this is the big picture, you know, wave magic wand to make something happen. I have heard people from the city of Everett, and I've heard people from the city of Snohomish separately say, well, I don't think we should do anything because I don't trust those guys to do it. And cities continue to eat themselves alive by saying, well, I'm not going to take action because I can't trust my neighbors, because no city has control over its neighbors. You know, Everett can't command anyone else to do anything, of course. But we have to act in a unified manner. We must, but cities are incapable of getting past this logic problem of, but I don't trust that the other guy isn't going to leave me to twist. And that's something I was asked specifically in Snohomish. But if we do this, you know, if Everett doesn't do anything, they're just going to be giving us a thumbs up and saying thanks. You know, we're just going to be screwed, right? We have to work in a collaborative way that we understand we're all taking action. We're all going to do this together. We need that unified action, and either we can get to it by choice, by actually collaborating meaningfully, or we can get to it with the stick of, and you saw that with House Bill 1782, the mandatory middle density bill. It was really putting everyone on the same level playing field. You know, that's the stick that's coming back again in next session if the cities can't get to a point of working collaboratively and trusting everyone's going to do this together, which, to be honest, isn't guaranteed right now in Snohomish County and probably the region. But if we can get there, you know, that's really what we need, because cities really are in the driver's seat along with the county. But we're having a hell of a time just getting to, let's work sincerely and collaboratively together. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, and I have a lot of job security.
Well, and again, I think that each of us as individuals say that we want housing. Each of us as individuals say that we don't want people to live unsheltered. We want to be able to, I want my daughter to be able to buy a home, right? We want all these things as an individual, but then when we actually get the opportunity to make change or to advocate for change or to put our money where our mouth is, then we all say, oh, wait, I don't want it in my neighborhood. Wait, that's a bad idea because this person wants to do it or and it just falls apart. So I think we all just need to kind of look a little bit more internally to see how we're educated and what we really would advocate for. And if there are things that you would advocate for, then please go advocate for them. Help us to make positive change and to make things happen. And to Chris's point, I take a little bit of a like, wait a minute, like we really are trying to partner. We really are trying to do our share. We're not trying to shy away from the fact that we are the urban center, that we do have the bulk of affordable housing. We do have the bulk of homeless residents. We do have the bulk of services, and we have enough. We have, we're the second lowest income in the county, so we're not a rich city that can solve these problems. And we really do want other cities to think about how they may do something small to bring in affordable housing or preserve affordable housing or have a small ability to care for those that are living unsheltered in their community versus always having to look for resources in Everett. And that's, we're going to continue to want to do that moving forward. So
I didn't mean to poke at Everett, but more that sentiment of, Everett's doing a lot, but how, if we do this, how do we know that our neighbors will follow suit? And instead of just leaving Everett to take the endless burden, like you described, it's like, well, Everett will do it. Everett will do it. Everett will do it. And I think that's a very real issue that you see. You can see how many LIHTC projects are in each city, and some cities have a lot. Some cities don't have too many. That's low-income housing tax credits. And so I think, Julie, your point is well taken. And one other thing that you were mentioning is, tell your leadership it's okay. Make it okay, use your voice. That was a question that Beth asked. I think it was Beth. What can we do? What can individuals do? I'd make the observation that every single person listening to this, every single human has an experience with shelter. Everyone is in a shelter of one sort or another, whether it's a bridge, a tent, a house, an apartment. You've all experienced shelter of one variety or another, and you have a valid voice in what shelter is and what shelter can be. Everyone has experiential knowledge with shelter and housing, and you're allowed to share that. You need to share that. Right now, what happens, ask any mayor that's on this call, ask any council person that's on this call, you don't hear be proactive. You don't hear messages of be proactive. What elected officials hear is, don't you dare change what I have right now. And that's got to change. And so if you're looking for things to do, it's really as easy as telling your elected leadership, it's okay. And in fact, I want you to do this positive thing, instead of just sitting in the background, sharpening your pitchfork meaningfully with, glaring at them. So use your voice, and you're allowed to do that. You're equipped to do that.
I would throw something else out there. I think it was Chuck Barone at Strong Towns made this recommendation that what if every property owner had an as of right ability to just go to the next highest density on their property? It's just make it easy. Is it really that bad to go from an RM4 to an RM8 zoning on a property, but just allow the opportunity for everybody to just take the next step up? And that's going to open up a whole different economic game for the system, but it's also going to treat zoning rather than some sort of purgatory that we're all locked into forever. It'll be more of a flexible means of adapting to market pressures. And it's a really brilliant idea. It's just a really simple thing. Everybody has the right to go to the next step up. And then that's just an as of right process to make it easier.
All right. Next question here. How can we mitigate the economic pressure of hedge fund investors? We talked a little bit about Blackstone a second ago, but is this an issue? Is there, and if so, what can be done?
Well, I would say yes, it is an issue. Two, do you even know how many of those units are in your current system? So if the answer is no to that, if you're not looking, then shame on us. We should be looking at this stuff to see what's going on. And back to the point I made about Julie earlier, we have to start going further up the river to see why the bodies are falling into the river, and not just leave it to someone like Julie to just deal with the trauma of the end of the stream. So who's the housing investor? How are they taking that supply off the market? Are they flipping it to VRBOs or Airbnbs? Is it a small investor or a big investment? These are kind of simple questions to get if you start looking in the right places. So I think that the task that we all have, and I would say here locally in my community, I'm doing this to figure it out in my community. How much of the housing stock is owned by people who don't live here? And I can tell you 28% of my housing stock in my county is owned by Floridians. It's like that's taking that supply out of our marketplace. Now, of those housing units, how many of those are actually going to renters that are actually working in my community? And how many of that is into just basically just a different version of a hotel? And we need to start looking there.
And I'll chime in. I take a step back. Why is this investment happening? Someone views it as profitable because there's a scarcity of supply. So clearly the next step is we need more supply. I hate to oversimplify it, but ultimately that's the answer. It's such a good investment because there's a scarcity. You fix that by creating more of it.
Any other thoughts before the next question? We have two more questions.
I would just like to throw in that, so I put it in the chat, but there's a financial incentive even for non-investors, just normal homeowners like me, to maintain a property as a rental. As I put in the chat, my neighbor on this side of the wall that I'm presenting from, they rent their townhome from the landlord for way more than I pay in my mortgage, because I saw it being advertised. I saw what the rent was advertised for. It's like, that's a lot more than my mortgage. If I can do the same thing, then I can also swing a home purchase. I'm financially incentivized to do so, because not only will I pay my mortgage, I'll be making money, and I'll be maintaining an investment that is something that I can sell for an absolute boatload of cash later. I mean, there's a financial incentive in the market right now, as Mike was speaking to, because of scarcity, to hold on to this. It is a self-reinforcing cycle. It's encouraging people to hold on to these properties. It's the deeper and deeper we get, I predict, the harder it's going to be to break out of it. So the clock really is ticking quite meaningfully here.
Joe?
I want to pick up on Mike's point, but also the recent chat that got in the comment about building height limits. That's another economic issue, that there's staying below a high-rise code and going above a high-rise code are two different animals from a cost standpoint, and fire safety and fire suppression and all of this other stuff, mechanics of the structure. So there is an economic threshold and barrier, and it's actually a benefit to stay below 5 stories from a standpoint of cost construction. So you're going to see more of those units, even though you might have a tremendous height limit. The other thing about having tremendous height limits is you're giving a gift to a property owner that's a winning lottery ticket. So if they have no carrying cost on the property, they could sit on it forever and hope that one day somebody shows up for a 300-foot tall building. So just to be aware of it, and I call it the planner's gift, that if you just change zoning without some sort of stick at the back end, you could perpetuate land speculation. And downtowns, that's a perpetual problem. The Canadians are dealing with a lot of these same issues, and they're dealing with them differently than the way that Americans do. You can wander up there to Canada and talk to them, or even see some of their policies. I find Canadians run into this stuff head first and more objective than we do in America. So they're going to have data and they're going to be more progressive on policies than we are in the States. But do look into what they're doing up in Vancouver.
So we have time for one more question. So I'm trying to, you guys have been wonderful submitting your questions in the chat. I think I'm going to pick out one that I've seen a couple of times pop up, and that's around light rail coming to the region and the impacts on communities, and then we'll wrap up. Anything, Chris?
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
go ahead, Julie. You first.
Well, I mean, again, we are obviously in the beginning. Well, the middle beginning of having these conversations and really looking at where the stations will be, what the land will be around it, what's the transit-oriented development needs, what does it look like in regards to the growth of possibilities for housing. And those are all conversations that are super important right now, that everybody comes to the table, because in our community, in Everett in particular, our South Everett community hasn't been as well represented. We don't hear from our residents. We have less engagement with our residents. And so we really need to find new ways to engage with our residents and have them be a part of that planning, because we have a lot of opportunities for economic growth, but we also have to ensure that we maintain affordability and keep our residents culturally, benefiting our community and adding to its richness and grandioseness. So I just really, again, I invite you to learn more about that process and become engaged in what's to come. So less scientific, less academic, but more, please, we want our communities to help us to create this.
And I think because I can't get away from being a nerd, it's at the end of the day, it's just about the number of units that we have. You saw this with the Whispering Pines redevelopment in Linwood. All those people might very well like to stay in the city of Linwood, but there are no affordable units in the city of Linwood, and there's no way to prevent them from having to be displaced when a building has reached the end of its life. I mean, it's literally sewage backing up. The fire marshal is about to red tag it. The building's got to go. The people have no place to go. It gets reduced to a really simple math equation of how much supply we have. As I put in the chat earlier, way up above, anti-displacement measures will never be effective until you have some kind of flex in your system. Until we address that Northwest Multiple Listing Service supply issue, if we have less than half a month of supply, nothing is going to work, because there's just not enough doors to go around, unless people are doubling up. They're living in other unsafe or vulnerable circumstances that I'm sure Julie sees on the regular, and being taken advantage of. It's a huge problem that you just can't get around. And light rail is going to exacerbate that. There's no question that light rail will exacerbate it. And so attempts to the contrary to fight that displacement are all predicated on if we address the supply problem in a meaningful way. Anything else in the meantime, in the interim, is just, like I said, it's a shell game with moving the paint around. Are you going to help this person instead of that person? If you're giving rental assistance first and last, lease up assistance to that person, not that person, you're just choosing who gets it and who doesn't. You're choosing who gets help, and you're not helping everybody. So that's a really grim way to end the conversation, but that's the sad facts. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'll go ahead and be a little bit controversial towards the end, if I may. Obviously, transit-oriented development are important, and they will form the backbone of future growth patterns. But I try to be mindful that it's not the only solution. There will always be different tastes and different needs in the home buying community. We can't put all our eggs in one basket and not do the other hard work that we have to do, and solely focus on Linwood and Everett and Mount Lake Terrace and those transit hubs. There will be continuing taste for other housing options, and people will drive to where they can get them, especially with the growing trend of being able to work from home. So sometimes containing sprawl and urban development doesn't work out the way you think. Sometimes you get that sprawl anyway. So I think it's very important to have the balance of housing choices that we can have, and not solely focus on transit-oriented development. While it is the backbone of future growth, it can't be the only solution.
I believe I'm supposed to kick it back over to Annette now, unless there were other just really brief comments to wrap up here.
Final comment, it's all about variety. To Mike's comment, it's about a place to live at every age and life stage, every income, every background. If that's the thing you're looking for the message to deliver to elected leadership, your friends or family, talk about that. Ask them, where's the starter home? Where's the home for a senior household that wants to downsize? Where's the household for a newlywed couple out of college? This time, that where are those types of housing getting built? Where do they exist? The answer is they don't. And that's what we need is we need variety. We need variety in our housing stock. We're not prohibiting anything. We're not prohibiting single family zoning. We're not talking about like just forbid the single family zones forever and always. They're evil. It's we need variety in our housing stock. And right now we don't have it and we're suffering.
All right. I love it. Excellent. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Just really quickly, next week, we will have Congresswoman Susan Del Bene and Congressman Rick Larson to talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and a little bit just about infrastructure. So I will be leading that conversation next week as well. It's been wonderful having you all here. We're right at 9:30. Oh, there's one more. Economic Forecast and Annual Meeting, April 27th, with Marita Chang as our keynote speaker. So that will be really a lovely conversation as well. So before we go, everybody, this is a coffee chat. We'd have coffee or some other beverage of choice, maybe air. There we go. It's been great seeing you all today. Have a great day and a great week. Thank you.